Hey y'all, from Spindle Mountain Mercantile. I am Heather. Welcome to my YouTube channel. One of our favorite furniture flips is to turn old vanities and desks into nightstands. Here's an example of a before and an after. This one was pretty easy to take apart because it had two separate tops and each side had 4 legs. This one I thought would be really easy. I didn't even realize each side only had 3 legs. So my sweet husband had to add an extra leg in the back, and it was not easy to do. I sold it to a friend. I didn't know her at the time, but she became a friend. Even after cutting the top, this one was pretty easy. We did have to put some Bondo in where the drawer was, and we had to cut the top, but there were 4 feet. And I think that's the most important part. Well, also how much Bondo you have to put in. Here's another one that's a similar style as that one. And I had to add the picture with the chicken, of course. Now I'm showing you this one specifically because I want you to see that flat edge. I'll show you another example of that in a little bit. So the friend who bought that other nightstand set is a furniture flipper, and she's super busy. She called me the other day and asked if I could do a job. I was so flattered because she's really good. She asked if I had any vanities around, and I said I had this one. I'm showing you this part right here because look how easy this is going to be to take apart. They didn't even use screws in it. They used nails. So all I have to do is take out the parts that are nailed in, which is that little design piece across the front, a piece in the back that keeps it sturdy, and we have to cut the top. And when I say we, I mean my sweet husband because he did the majority of this work. I'm going to walk you through everything we did. Now, I don't have everything filmed because this is the very first time we've done an entire piece of furniture on film. Bear with us and give us some grace because we will learn how to do this. The most important thing to do before you start redoing furniture is to put your animals away. My chickens like to eat sawdust, and my dogs walk all over the place, so they will get paint remover on their feet. The next most important thing is to make sure you have the correct safety gear. You might look a little scary, but I promise you'll feel worse if you don't take care of yourself. I like to wear these goggles. They're more like glasses that wrap around so that stuff won't go in from the sides and splatter your eyeballs. But they also have some that are very well made that are more like the kind you wear when you're swimming. Most of our safety gear is from Harbor Freight, but I will leave links to what you can buy on Amazon. I like gloves like this because they have a no-slip grip and they're very long, so they cover up more of my arm. I'm not going to leave a link for gloves because I feel like that's something super particular to what the person using them prefers. And I want to encourage you to find what is safest for you and will keep your hands protected the best way. There are a lot of good masks out there that will protect your face, but if you're in a confined area, you'll want to use a respirator. That's what I was wearing in that picture where I look so scary. We're working outside, so I'm just wearing a mask today with my goggles. Before I got outside, my sweet husband had already cut the top. So I'm going to take some pictures out of the film I shot earlier to show you where he cut it. I grabbed this shot from the center where it shows on either side it curves inward. On the top of the right side drawers, he cut just inside where it curves towards the left of it, and on the left hand side, he cut just where it curves towards the right. Do you see that curved edge that's on the front of the top? If you want to make that continue all the way around the sides, you need to use a router. If you don't have a router, that's okay. I will give you a fix after I show you this step. This is the first time my sweet husband used a router on a big piece of furniture, and he did such a great job. Right here, he is turning the piece over and cutting it through his table saw so that the edge will be super straight. He had to make the edge just a little bit closer to the piece because his router attachment isn't as wide as the one that's in the front. But it's okay. It's going to look enough like the one in the front that you won't be able to tell any difference. Before doing the routing on this big piece, he practiced quite a bit on some smaller pieces like cutting boards and decor boards. His biggest issue was to hold the piece sturdy so it did not jiggle around. I didn't film all of it because I had to put my phone down and help him hold it super still. He did make just a few little mistakes where he would pause. It kind of dug in a little bit more, but that was okay. All he did later was do some extra sanding there to make it look smooth. Now here's the fix I promised you. As you can see on the front of these nightstands, there is no routed edge, so when we cut it flat on each side, it matched. The same thing is true of these nightstands. But look at the third one. Even though it has a routed edge on the front and we cut flat on the sides, it still looks really good. Because the sides are so different and away from the front, it doesn't have to match exactly. So if you don't have a router, don't be afraid to do one of these projects. We have sold quite a few of these and our customers always love them. I'm going to go through a few different ways to strip paint from furniture. I thought this first type would be my favorite way to do it, but it's not. It's called a powder sprayer and you attach it to an air compressor. It's very expensive to buy the powder and it's hard to recycle it because if it gets dirty at all, you have to clean out all of the debris. And you can see here it works pretty good, but if you turn up the power really high, it'll scratch your item. The second way is by using a spray-on stripper, and I love this one. It's super powerful, but it's crazy expensive. I'm not sure what makes it so strong being in an aerosol, but look how fast this dissolves the paint. I didn't speed this up that much, and my sweet husband was holding the camera. He didn't want to stand there that long. I promise you, this was fast. To do the bulk of the paint removing, I'm using this multi-tool scraper that I found at Lowe's. I have found a really good priced one on Amazon, and I will leave a link for that in the comments. If you make a purchase from Amazon by using my link to get there, they will give me a small compensation, but won't raise your price. The longer you wait for paint remover to do its job, the more paint it will remove. There are 4 layers on this piece. It has the original stain and sealer and 3 coats of paint. Right underneath the blue is the white that you can see I'm scraping off now. I started scraping this area right after my husband was done filming the paint stripper doing its job. So it's super fresh, and you can see it only took off that one blue layer and a little bit of the white. After not waiting too much longer, you can see that it peels off all of the paint all the way down to the sealer and stain. You don't want to wait too long for the paint stripper to do its job because it will dry out and then you have to start from the beginning. Now, I have not seen any paint remover that will remove everything, including the original stain and paint, without hurting the furniture. So almost always, if you want to get to the natural wood, you're going to have to do this process at least twice. We did some research and asked around at Lowe's, and everyone said Jasco is the best paint remover. We paid almost $60 for this gallon at Lowe's. Yeah, it does cost a lot, but it does a great job and you don't have to use very much of it. My preferred method of applying it is using a paintbrush. Make sure you use an old paintbrush you don't care much about because it's not going to be worth much after you're done using it with this. I also want to note that I should not have been wearing short sleeves here. I should have worn long sleeves. I did remember to wear my goggles though. Just like a knife blade, where one side has an abrupt edge and the other side gets smaller as it goes towards the sharp part, a scraping tool is made the same way. Because we keep ours razor sharp, I have to be really careful not to gouge the wood. I like to do just a little bit of soft back and forth with the paint to see how much is going to come off and to see how soft the wood is before I really go to town. Sometimes I pull it towards me, sometimes I push it away from me. Sometimes I have that razor edge down towards the wood, and sometimes I have it facing up. I've stripped a lot of paint in my lifetime, and I've never really had any job that seems the same. Sometimes it comes off in little tiny pieces, and sometimes you find a really good piece that just comes off in one big strip and it's glorious. That's pretty rare. Most of the paint on this piece came off using the steady, slow method where you just do a little bit at a time. And that was okay. When it got to a point where it wouldn't come off, I just went back and added a little bit more paint remover and let it sit while I worked on another part and then came back to it. I apologize for the jiggling of the camera. I had my stand on top of the table, which I put this piece on, not realizing it would wiggle around so much. You'll see that I turn my scraper different directions. That's because I'm trying to go with the grain of the wood, because if I do scratch it, that will show fewer scratches. I do want you to see the entire process of this, but that took hours and hours and days and days and days. So I'm just going to show you some of it, mostly the sides, and when I get to the front, I'll pop back in. But until then, I'm just going to speed this up real fast. Oh, I forgot about this part until I was doing the voiceover. Whoops. There's another reason I shouldn't have my camera stand on top of the table. I'm moving a lot. I wanted you to see this too. Sometimes you get really lucky and you find paint that doesn't need any chemical to be removed. A lot of people will use a heat gun for that effort too. And you can buy paint stripper that doesn't have horrible, horrible chemicals that aren't so dangerous. I love danger though, y'all. I just don't get out enough to not be dangerous. So far, all I've shown you is how I work on smooth surfaces, but now we're getting to the front and the drawers, and there's a lot of etched out designs, so we need to get into those crevices. We found these brushes at Harbor Freight. They were super cheap, I think $4. I didn't find the equivalent on Amazon. I think these are $5, and I will leave a link for those. We also use different kinds of steel wool, and I buy these at Lowe's, but I found a price that was a few dollars less on Amazon. I'll leave a link for all of those. My favorite tool I used for this was one my sweet husband taught me how to make with a flathead screwdriver. I simply drew it back and forth across his tabletop grinder until it had the exact right shape to fit inside the crevices on my nightstands. I did have to go back and forth several times between the nightstands and the grinder to get the exact right size. But once I did, I used the brush on the other side of the grinder to make sure that the edge was smooth and there were no little pieces sticking out that might gouge the wood. For these parts, I used a smaller brush to get that paint remover way down in those little crevices. I let it sit for a while, but not until it was dry, and then I just got to working on it, and this thing worked so well. It took me about 3 swipes all the way through each of those curves. Each time I added new remover to those crevices, I worked on the outside flat part while I waited for the remover to do its magic. There's really no correct step to tell you in order what to do with each tool. You'll kind of just figure out when you need to use a scraper or steel wool, or the little screwdriver tool, or the brushes. I don't know how to explain that, but I promise if I figured it out, you will too. And I just kept doing that until I had all the drawers done and the fronts of both cabinets. Again, I'm going to speed this up so you don't have to walk through all those treacherous valleys with me that took hours and hours and days and days. I'm just throwing this in for kicks and giggles. We found this water pick in a dumpster and it works. I would have used this to get all the leftover dried paint out of those crevices, but I had to refill it constantly, so that didn't work out. But if you have a small project, you might want to get out your water pick. Next, it was time to sand, and before we started this portion, we made sure the wood was completely dry. If you don't let your wood dry before you start sanding, it can kind of slough off, and big chunks of it will just come off with your sanding. So make sure your wood is really dry before you start this. My incredibly clever husband came up with the best idea for sanding the spindles on the front legs of the nightstands. He put duct tape on the back of 220 grit sandpaper, and then he cut that into strips. By the way, we always get our sandpaper at Harbor Freight. It is a better price, but that's not why. It's just better quality. I don't know why. I don't know what it's made of that makes it different, but we really prefer it. He takes those strips of sandpaper and wraps them around each leg and pulls them back and forth and up and down. It's super pliable, so it gets into all the little bits and pieces, all those grooves. It just fits right into them, and it works perfectly. I'm telling you, this man is a genius. There's more than one reason I keep him around. He really is sweet. He did all of the sanding with the power tools. He likes to use this palm sander. It does kind of an up and down, back and forth, left to right vibration kind of sanding. I prefer a sander that goes around, but I think this one probably is better if you want to stay with the grain of the wood. He goes back and forth using this really stiff brush that he found at Harbor Freight and the sander. And he starts with 220 and he goes all the way up to 400. I don't have much filming of that because I just wasn't out there when he did it, and he's not really the cameraman kind of guy, you know what I'm saying? But here's what it looked like when he was finished. One side panel was pretty significantly damaged. It had gouges and scratches and there were wormholes in it. I let the client know we could fix it, but it might still be noticeable, and she opted for a brand new piece of veneer. Well, before I did that, I had to see what was underneath because, curiosity. I'm so glad I looked. Y'all, underneath were tons of little worm lines. Now, don't worry. Those worms have been dead like 80 something years, right? She decided, I sent her this video and she liked how it looked so much, she decided to keep it this way. I'm so glad she did because it's just clever and unique and fun. And it still looks really good. One of the brushes we bought at Harbor Freight had brass bristles, and that and elbow grease is the only things my husband used to clean the hardware. He didn't even use lemon juice, y'all. We showed them to the customer who originally wanted gold hardware, but she liked them so much, she said to keep them like this. Before I even knew what happened, my sweet husband had the whole thing stained. He used stain we found on the side of the road, we were gifted, we found in the trash, we bought for clearance, everything he could find to get the color that the client wanted, and he nailed it. When he was done, he put this Minwax wipe-on poly on it, and he did it in 4 coats. In between each coat, he let it dry, and he sanded it with 400 grit sandpaper. Please remember that we weren't doing this for YouTube, so we don't have a lot of great footage, and that includes a lot of staged pictures at the end. I took this picture when it was still in the garage, and I was squealing a little because it was perfect. We opted just to clean up the back and add some stain and sealer because it just made it look like it wasn't right off a brand new showroom floor. I am super proud of this, and I loved how it turned out. I am happy to tell you our client loves them as well. I am super grateful that AI and my son helped me get some beautiful pretend staged pictures. And of course, I'm grateful for y'all too. Until you see me again next time, I hope you have a wonderful week. And as always, I hope you are blessed. Bye. How could I not jump on this trend?
Don't forget to like, subscribe, and most importantly share. Spindle Mountain Mercantile.